Good afternoon. This is Professor Amina Al-Din on Muslim Network TV on Critical Talk. And of course, everybody knows it's Tuesday and it's election day. But we're not at this moment talking about election day, but I would invite you at the top and at the end of this program to join us on Muslim Network TV later this evening from 8 to 10 when we are perusing what's going on. Today, we're talking about the immigrant realities of immigration. And let me just start out with some numbers. Immigrants comprise almost 14% of the US population, or more than 44 million people, out of a total of 327 million people, according to the Census Bureau. Today, immigrants and their US born children make up about 28% of US inhabitants. Undocumented are around 11 million. Those who arrive legally and overstay their visas are making up most of that 11 million. 70%, 76% of Americans consider it a good thing that we make paths toward citizenship. 81% of Americans say that that is absolutely necessary. So, why is it a political debate? Well, it's been a political debate for a number of decades, mostly because Congress has failed to agree on how to address immigration challenges such as border security and undocumented immigration. And the deadlock has left many policy questions up to the courts and the executive branch. And this is very important because when Congress fails to act, and we may want to consider that in upcoming further elections, when we have to think about Congress, because immigration is such a debate largely because of Congress. President Trump has stepped in, as did President Obama. Obama was famous for instituting the DACA uh, immigration policy, which talked about immigrant children being brought here by their parents who were largely illegal, but it served to preserve them in many senses, which we'll talk about today. Um, Also, Trump has stepped in and moved to restrict immigration. He's built a wall and he's stoked controversy. He's had a Muslim ban. All of these things we will talk about today. And I have two wonderful guests. The first of which is Dr. Felix Masoud Piloto. He's an emeritus professor at DePaul University in the Department of History. He specializes on Latin American history, Cuba-US relations, and Cuban immigration to the US. He's the author With Open Arms and From Welcome Exiles to Illegal Immigrants, Cuban Migration in the US from 1959 to 1995. Also with us today, we have Fatima Mirza, who is the co-founder of Worry Free Community, a social service organization with a focus on population health. But it's a little more than that, but we'll talk about that later. This nonprofit utilizes the health industry needs to provide competency building at the individual level, channeling the wealth of experiences at the corporate level, and aligns available community resources to bring about the rich, much needed socioeconomic changes to families and communities, particularly in the South Asian Muslim community. I thought it was welcome, both of you. I thought it would be great to have the two of you together because, in many ways, you represent two different arms of the need for immigration policy and to look at just the whole in what is this immigration debacle? Why are we having it? Um, Other Western nations are having the same kinds of problems with getting a reasonable immigration policy. The Muslim world has none. The rest of the world that immigrants don't choose to go to don't have the problems. So we're going to explore a smorgasbord of stuff. And let me begin with uh, Felix. Hey.
Hello.
Um,
Thanks for having me.
you're more than welcome. Cuban immigration has always been a problem. Not because of Cubans themselves, although I'm a little ticked at them in this election, but Cuban immigration has always been a problem for a number of reasons. Could you, in a very short narrative, what is Cuban U.S. immigration problem? What are they? Why are we still having them?
Well, very quickly, Cubans have always come to the United States as a place of refuge, going back to the colonial period when they were trying to get rid of the Spanish rule. And after independence, the United States became a place where Cubans migrated, mainly for work, to find work here. A lot of musicians came that period, a lot of baseball players and entertainers, and others who had came with contracts. Now, in 1959, with the revolution, the whole migration from Cuba became extremely politicized, and it was founded on the idea or the myth that the Cuban Revolution will be very short lived. So the United States, what the United States did was to allow Cubans into the U.S. with the assumption that the revolution will be overthrown by the United States and Cuba, and a combination of both, and they will return back. They will return home within a few months or years. I was a product of that. I came to this country in 1961 with the same idea. But the thing is, the revolution continued. It's got gained strength despite all the attacks and so on, and more Cubans keep coming in because the United States never actually set out a policy. They just had a strategy to get Cubans out of Cuba so they could go and fight against the government, and that's the way it's been for the last 61 years.
But
So
Cubans, it's not like Cuba is this huge country. I mean, I could drop all of Cuba in South Dakota.
right, oh
What's
yeah,
the issue? If everybody left the island and brought themselves over to South Dakota, we wouldn't even notice you guys.
well, no, the thing is, yeah, the United States would like that very much, that they would have the island to themselves. Cuba has always the country of Cuba itself. The main value of it has been the strategic value, military strategic value for the U.S. It's right at the center of the Caribbean, and that's the gateway to all kinds of warfare. Now that's not as relevant as it was back then, but that's why the U.S. has always welcome Cubans. Well, and that has a number of. I'll be happy to explain more if we have more time. But that has changed through the years, and I can tell you. And now we are in a situation where Donald Trump has made the whatever policy there was towards Cuba extremely brutal. Just he's not even allowing Cubans to come to the United States, and we're now in this. Um, a contradictory situation where Cubans that had just come to the U.S. cannot even go back to visit relatives, as what happened during the Obama period. So it has
It's a
taken over.
mess. And given that they're all Trump voters, I won't have, I'll say more about that later.
Well,
Uh,
they're not all fair voters.
I know. Well, Fatima, now we're talking about South Asian with 1 billion people. I don't know if we can take in 1 billion people. Everybody wants to come to the United States. Why don't they stay home?
That's what I told my parents too. See, I came here as a teenager as well. So yeah, it is basically the promise of better life, or the promise of the can't say well-being in a much larger sense, and the freedom to the freedom to exercise your rights. Absolutely. Because this is what United States stand for the rest of the world, to exercise the basic human rights. And when we come here, we expect, or any immigrant you would talk to, they would expect that the champion of human rights. So when we
Wait a minute.
that's what is out there in the world.
But why would you come to a country so that you can, I don't know, express your human rights when you don't even bother to learn what those are or what the rights are under this Constitution?
Very often when an immigrant comes here, or people who come here, we 98% of our population, the people who we serve, our consumers, are actually immigrant. And we hear and see and feel this attitude from them as well, that, oh, this is my basic right. Why is it not given to me? Definitely, some of their rights, they do understand that. Because, for example, let's talk about healthcare. Healthcare in this country, knowing that healthcare is one of the basic human rights, we are all fighting for it. With this whole debacle with ACA and Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare, whatever they want to call it, it feels like everyone recognizes what the need is. Nobody can deny the problems that with the healthcare system, yet they are all fighting for that one name, whether it's Obamacare or Affordable Care.
What is the healthcare system in South Asia?
Now, everybody knows that there is the healthcare. For example, I can't talk about other countries. I can talk about Pakistan because that's where I come from. Okay. So definitely there is a basic healthcare system, and when you go to the government hospital, you're expected to get it for free. So the system is in place. It is the corruption in the middle that gets in the way. Now, both the government recognizes that and people recognizes that. So we're not fighting the basic healthcare system. We're not fighting the basic need. We're fighting the corruption. So when we come to the US, we expect that, simply because they recognize basic human rights. So they think that healthcare being the basic human right, this would be given to us. But when you get here, you realize that, there are many different sectors of healthcare which you can be eligible for. There is Medicaid that only citizens can get. There is then, so immigrants cannot get Medicaid till they become eligible for citizenship, which could be in cases of refugees, which could be a year or pretty much right away. In the cases of residences, it would be after 5 years that they get the green card. And if they are on the work visas, they don't have that right to the basic health care. However, they are paying.
Let me ask you a question. Why would you think you have a right to something that only citizens get?
Correct. Because people who are on the work visas, they are paying taxes. They are paying, they don't, they pay taxes, which when they go to buy something, and they also pay because they are residents here. They file taxes. So when you are filing taxes in whatever way you are paying them, they are a part of the system. When they are a part of the system, then how can we exclude them from the basic right?
Okay, we need to take a break here for a few moments. Get your water, get your coffee, have your tea, and we will be right back. This is Critical Talk with Professor Amina Al-Din, and we're looking at the realities of immigration. We'll be right back.
Billboards are popping up all over the country with an...
Our neighbors don't realize that Muslims are absolutely opposed to ISIS.
Salam. My name is Abdul Malik Mujahid. I'm an imam in Chicago.
So how do we bring up the energy which can really have an impact on the world? You need to build bridges of understanding among people, and we need to have America moving forward. That lesson learned brought the strength of humanity to America, which is the diversity.
Mujahid Talks, only on Muslim Network TV. Faithfully connected.
We're back with Critical Talk, and I'm having a wonderful time, I hope, with Dr. Masood Piloto and Fatima Mirza, and we're talking about, from two different points of view, the realities of immigration. And I want to go back to you for a moment, Fatima. In any sovereign nation state, citizens, of course, have rights above others, right? If I've been a resident in other states, and I don't have, nor would I expect to have the same rights as citizens, even though I'm paying taxes. Because the taxes are going for a lot of things, but that's irrespective. Every state has the right to say whatever it wants to say and give rights to citizens, give other rights, or maybe just a portion of those, to refugees, migrants, immigrants, I don't know, folks in exile, or folks visiting, for very long stretches of time. Why is the United States, or should the United States, give all of the rights to anybody who pays a tax or doesn't in the United States that it gives to citizens?
Well, the problem is that when we are expecting the immigrants to behave and pay or pay equally, or sometimes over and above, because when they come here on a work visas, or when they come here on immigrant visas, for example, they go through the hardship, and they are going through the hardship, and they are actually, in most cases, they are paying the price. For example, they would probably, not more than likely, and this happens to many of, we see this when in our consumers too, that they are hired at a much lower price. Their wages are lower. You do definitely, there is a difference between the foreign exchange. So even when they are bringing in hundreds of thousands of what they consider in their currency, which is a relatively a good amount of money, good value of money, but when you convert that with the conversion factor, it really turns out to be the very basics, or even below federal poverty level for anybody's annual income. So in those cases, when we do see that, they are expected to work hard, and almost everybody that we see as consumers, they are working very hard. You can make them work 15 hours, 16 hours, or 18 hours days, and they're willing to pay that price because they come here and they understand. A lot of these folks do understand, however, but in return, they do expect that, because of the fact that there is a charm. For example, when they are seeing the movies, or what United States is back home, what do you see? You see New York, you see California, you see these big buildings, lights, and comfortable life. You don't see that. Even if you go 2 hours out of Chicago in the western suburbs, there are cornfields, and there is not even a single street light on the street as you are driving by at night. But those realities are not shown.
Okay, but
so
there have been enough immigrants from Pakistan over the last half century to know better. They would have told relatives, it's not New York, dudes. It's the cornfields down the road. You're going to work. The average American who is successful, works 15 to 16 hours a day also. But, and, you know, they are citizen by right of birth or etc. But they've had 50 years to learn better. Felix, do Cubans experience? I mean, well, Cubans kind of know that it ain't all paradise, but they've made little Cuba.
Yeah, because the numbers grew so fast. Again, that based on that original idea that this will be just temporary, but time went on and military initiatives against the revolution failed, and so they came to the determination that we're here to stay. And now it's come. It's been now. This is the third generation of Cubans coming to the United States, and most of them won't even go back if things were to change to their liking. Even if they work two jobs, because they live here better than they would live in Cuba. And besides, whatever changes come to Cuba, there's going to be a great need for great investments, for rebuilding infrastructure. So they rather stay here, which is interesting because they some of them, we're talking about the largest amount of Cubans who have come to the United States have done so in the last 15, 20 years, much bigger than the early generation that is here, said, and have grown up here. But now, and it turns out that even as they, as we're seeing in these elections, for example, is those new Cubans, as they're called, are more conservative than the other ones. They're voting for Trump.
I know, but I think the same kind of thing is happening in the Muslim community, where Muslims are deciding and using religion as an excuse. Well, I want the benefits of America, but I don't want to involve myself in their politics, which is what got them here in the first place.
I don't know. I guess it could be the same mentality that they're just here just for a brief period of time and then they're going back home.
Or I mean, that certainly was that for a while. But I think, and Fatima would agree, I'm setting down roots. I want to earn a living. I want to buy a house. I don't want to involve myself in anything else that has to do with politics, all of the things that come along with keeping a democracy and citizenship. What do you think, Fatima?
So this is what happens, and this is, you know, we have struggled with these thoughts, and we have seen people struggle and help them out as well. When an immigrant family comes to United States, you have to see you have to take into consideration the channel they come into the United States. Those people who come in terms of work visas, they know that there is a specific time period they have, and this period would be ending. At that point, they hope to continue their employment, or perhaps they go to a different country, in fact, for their next employment. And that we have seen as well. But those who remain here, they try to grow their roots here. Now, if they come through the chain migration, it takes them 5 to 7 years to literally get their basic footing into basic footing, and have what we call a simple basic platform, which means basically having a housing that they can call their own. Very often people live with relatives for the first 2 years or first year, definitely. And then they move on into their small apartment where it's overcrowded and they are living. So another couple years, you give it. So by the time it is about 6 years, that's when they are settled with housing. That's when they're settled with the healthcare, because now they're citizen and they have some options. Prior to Obamacare, we didn't even have any option till they have solid employment. But thanks to Obamacare, now we do have options for them, and they can at least buy into that. Or they can go on to Medicaid if they are eligible for that. Mm-hmm. So at least now, because if you get hit by, God forbid, by some kind of an issue, end up in a hospital, they actually have these small payments for $100 to $200 per month. That, because if you can't pay your bills, then you go on the installment with the
right.
you know how that works, right? Sometimes you get the charity care, but not necessarily. So you get these hospital bills that they pay in for 10, 15 years actually.
Well,
I
citizens do that too.
Sorry?
Citizens do that too.
Correct, but consider this fact that citizens do have some kind of backing, because if you say that for example, let's take my kids, at least they have a house to call their own
Mm-hmm.
because of their parents, right? But when I came in, we left the home back home.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that if a citizen goes to the hospital and can't pay their bill, they have to pay every month too.
Correct, absolutely. But considering that that immigrants who come in, they would have to pay for every single item. Okay, let me explain that. So even the littlest thing that we could go, for example, if I need something, I go into my mom's garage and I say, oh, this is what something I need, let me take it. I don't have to spend the money. And that's what it means when establishing roots. So establishing some kind of a basic living standard or housing where you can bank on. I do have.
I understand that, but the argument against that, not against that, but an alternative view would be African Americans have been here 400 years. Many don't have roots. They don't have your house to depend upon. They're homeless. They're unable to get Medicare, because if you don't have an address, you can't get Medicare, Medicaid, or anything else. They are turned away from hospitals, and they are citizens. So why should an already 10th generation citizen feel anything for somebody who just came here a hot minute ago? In the scheme of things,
no, this is a reality of United States, that when you get here and when you live, you're completely baffled that United States, as the champion of human rights in the world, haven't taken care of their own population.
Right.
And this is something which it is not fathomable even for a person like me. Why are we struggling for one particular race? I mean, what happened to Mr. Floyd was completely, it is a reminder in my household and in my organization, it's literally a reminder every single day that this particular country that's the champion of freedom and freedom of speech, you're every single day we feel ourselves being suffocated, and this is the realities that you start to feel once you start to leverage the freedom. So when your basic needs are, when you're struggling with basic food and shelter, you probably not look at this. So by the time you start to breathe the air and see or experience the quality of air, then you start to see these realities as well. And you say that, wow, I didn't realize that here's an entire race in United States that's actually do not have the similar rights. And you look and you say, why is that? And it comes and these are I agree with you, these are some of the basic basic disparities within the population that we start to see. But usually for an immigrant, it takes good 20 years before they start to see these things.
That's unfortunate. They need to speed it up.
We need to speed that up. Absolutely.
Cubans have been here for a minute, and Cubans are voting against immigration. They're voting against, name it, Obamacare. Is it in the beans, or what? I mean, what's going on here? I mean, is it too much rice and beans? On the other side, I got Muslims who all of a sudden they've gotten here and they're comfortable, and now religion says I can't participate in politics, I am going nuts. I looked at something, what was it? Cubans for Trump. And I really wanted to strangle those people.
Why?
And,
Why?
you know, but all of the little groups, whether it's South Asians or Cubans who are right-minded Cubans, not the nuts, instead of them coming together in the common cause of human rights, they become ethnocentric. You can't have a country with everybody in a different room only advocating for their rights. That's not a country. That's something else. And it feeds into send all of them back and don't let no more in. What do you think?
Yeah, after I come in, you can close the doors, right?
So,
No,
I mean, we got a wall up down south, which South Asians, I'm not talking about in general, because there have been a few, have ignored. We have children in cages getting no medical care. COVID is rampant. We have women being sterilized against their will. We've seen pictures of what to me is too damn long lines marching up and across. Sometimes it's a highway, other times it's a field. People are drowning, trying to get in here to be locked up in cages like cattle. What are we going to do? Because they're still there. The numbers, hundreds of children have been separated from their parents, which has not happened to the South Asian community. But it seems to be that there is no goodwill toward other groups who are suffering under our lack of attention to what Fatima was talking about earlier. It's this issue of human rights. So Felix, what's going on south of the border? I don't even know where the border is anymore.
Well, look, first of all, the issue of human rights is, and people who see that from outside of the United States, is a big myth. It's a propaganda. The United States is the biggest violator of human rights in the world. That is the fact. So, but they sell the image outside. You know, if you come to the United States, your rights will be respected, and you live in a much better place. That is simply not true. In the case of the border, the border, that has always been an issue, going back to the 1920s, the 1950s, where there have been huge deportations of people, of migrants who were welcome to the United States to work in the fields while the United States was fighting World War I and World War II. And then afterwards, they send them all back, including their children who have been born here and had knew of no other place than the United States. That's happened, and it's happening now again with the same thing, not only with the Mexicans, but the Central Americans, which have come here in hundreds of thousands, and because there were civil wars going on in their country, sponsored by the United States. These were civil wars in the United States really fuel. And now that the wars are over and their countries are destroyed by war, they're impoverished by a number of other conditions, they're asked, okay, the war is over, go back home, however you can. We don't want you here anymore. Well, they play their role during the 80s and 90s as they were coming in. What's happening with the children is simply a cruel policy. It is a policy. It is been documented that the Trump administration said we're going to take their children away regardless of how old they are. And what it's turned out to be now is that those children, those kids, they don't know where the parents are. And the United States has no way of finding them. There are what the media is reporting. There's 570, I think, but I'm sure it's more than that. So the issue of immigration, as far as how you get all this inhumane conditions, cruel conditions, and so on, it is all because it has been politicized. In Latin America, at least, it depends of where you're coming from. If you're coming from a country that the United States doesn't like the government or wants to get rid of the government, you're welcome. If you're coming from a place where the United States support the government, you're not. Better example than that, the Haitians in the 1980s, they were fleeing the worst the worst dictatorship, most brutal dictatorship in the hemisphere, and they would not allow it here because they say, "Oh no, you're coming here just for a better life. You're coming here as economic refugees, and we cannot accept that. Go back to your country." The country that the United States supported the repression that was going on there. So uh, politics always gets in the way, and I think what Fatima was saying before, the also life gets in the way. They come here expecting to either go back soon or to improve their life better, but they get married, they have children, and then what do you do then? So it's a
Well, you
slight,
know, I'm listening to the two of you, and I'm going to make sure the two of you meet outside this program and have you back on
yeah.
because I know Fatima recently, and I've learned so much from her about the state of the kind of the mind and the heart of the immigrant. But we have a question, and I'm gonna put it up, and then we're gonna take another quick, well, not so quick, but we're going to take another break. And this is from Amina Mitchell, who says, what happens if relatives of the new immigrant have not financially established themselves? So I want to tackle that when we come back. This is Professor Amin Al-Din with Muslim Network TV's Critical Talk, and we're talking about the realities of immigration with Felix Massoud and Fatima Mirza. We'll be right back.
Assalamualaikum!
I love Adam's World because it makes me learn in a fun way. That Adam has a green face and orange hair. I like this song. I like how Adam sings. I like Adam's World because it makes me happy. What? No. 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 And here's Adam and here's Anissa. Adam is and his sister. Adam is a boy and he is very smart.
Download the new Adam's World app at adamsworldapp.com and let's help tomorrow's Muslims today.
This is Professor Amin Al-Din on Critical Talk, which is a production of Muslim Network TV. And today we're talking about the realities of immigration with Dr. Felix Massoud Piloto and Fatima Mirza. And after we answer, before the show is over, I got to get you two together because these pods of people fighting for their ethnic rights, because that's what it becomes, are not going to do it. You know, the larger topic is human rights. And if you fight only for your own and no one else's, you can't get anywhere. But I want to go back to Amina Mitchell's question, which is what happens if the relatives of the new immigrant have not financially established themselves? Do they have to resort to lying, pretending that there are resources that are not there? What happens?
This is, would you mind, Dr. Felix, if I take the, okay, thank you. Yeah, this is a billions dollars worth of a question. Because Dr. Amna, this and Dr. Amina, this is so important to understand this. we have actually seen breaking up of the families. We have seen people losing their basic values for which they stood for many generations actually. And this this struggle for the basic needs, it tends to be so long, or that basic the establishing of oneself in this country, that period is so long that it destroys almost everything. Sometimes it destroys almost everything for which the immigrant families come here for. And that's one of the most heartbreaking things that we have seen happening. Parents may not, but the kids get away from their parents. We have seen families breaking because of the fact that they can't get settled, and they may take the ways or the paths which may not be agreeable. It doesn't hold up to the family values. So the kids or the kids or their children exit the family, or one of the spouse may exit the family. We have seen that happening. Yeah.
Felix, what have you seen?
Well, the question of with money and how do you get by? There are a number of in the case of Latin Americans. I'll give you a couple of examples. The one I know best, of course, the Cuban case. The Cubans were the beneficiaries of very generous United States support. Again, the idea was that they will be here for a short time, and they open up all kinds of they used to get monetary assistance, medical assistance, job placements. Since many in the early years, in the early waves, most of them were professionals, and some of them had studied in the United States, so they were all kinds of mechanisms for them by the government, so that they could revalidate their titles if they were doctors or engineers or whatever. So that was the case, and that started diminishing. But that's the case of the Cuban is because that's very political. They're seen as the chosen by the United States government. But that policy applies to many other times. The latest migration from Latin America, Venezuela. From Venezuela, the United States wants to make sure they want to get rid of the Maduro government, and they had failed at doing that. But what had happened is that many of the Venezuelans that left the country early on, after 20 years ago, which is how much this has been going on. They were people who had money. Many of them established businesses in this country, and so a network is created, and all of these groups work through networks. The ones that don't have a network, which, for example, the example I gave earlier, with the Haitians, who were predominantly Black, 95% of the Haitian population is Black. They were not welcome because of that period. And in addition to that, they had the political issue. But even the Haitians, because of, fortunately, human solidarity, they did not get a welcome, but a number of organizations were created in the United States to help them, non-profit organizations, humanitarian organizations, without any help from the government. So money, of course, is a big issue. Most of the people who come, especially if they come as refugees by boat, they have to spend all their life savings to get through, even through the Mexican border. The so-called coyotes that carry people through they charge $8,000 to $10,000 a person to bring them across, and that's it. They wipe them out. They're not, and not only that, when they try to pay that money on the long trek that they have to make to get to the U.S. border, they're walking. Yeah, they're walking. These people work thousands of miles, which is incredible with their children. So it is a phenomenon that has many different angles. But I always see it, and the more I study different cases, is that the politics have 90% to do with what's going on. Obviously, the people who leave their country leave because they're having a real problem, whether it's economic or religious or whatever the case may be. They want to go to a place where they're going to be better. They're going to have certain freedoms of other types, and it's very difficult find that, because you have to. It depends on what kind of.
Well, tell me, I come from a people where it is not a better country to find any of the things that immigrants come from, but I am determined to get these little ethnic pods, those willing to come together to hear the histories, to learn about each other so that they can support each other, because that becomes critical.
Yeah.
Felix and the other Cubans I know need to know Fatima and Worry Free community. Do you see what I'm saying? Other faces and voices have got to show up to talk about these things, because the average American has no idea of green cards and all them other cards unless I don't know, one of the kids marries somebody who's from somewhere else. And then, you know, you got to sponsor them. And then you got to turn your life inside out to sponsor them, right? You don't know any of these things. You know, you're living in, and if you're African American, Native American, or a poor white American, which is a large portion of the white country, you're saying, oh, wait a minute, somebody's giving them something? They got the nerve to demand something? I've been here since forever and can't get a dime. You know, neither Cuban Americans nor members of the Pakistani American community have been fussing and lending a voice to the fact that the people on the reservations are COVID inundated. You know, they don't have all this care that immigrants even have. They don't have running water, let alone hand sanitizer and this and that and the other. So while it could be a collection of people who are suffering in this wonderful country, it can also be a collection of people who banded together to say, look at here, there are human rights. Let us march forth as a multi-ethnic group, multi-religious group, and do something about something. You know, I mean, we're all sitting on pins and needles. Well, I'm not quite sitting on pins and needles because I'm going to have dinner and coffee before the election results start coming in. But one of the things that made me sad, the Cuban community is extraordinarily politically active. The Pakistani American community, not so much. There are Pakistani Americans that want to run because they're from Pakistan or because they're Muslim, but not for the nation as a whole. And it might be a fact that they don't understand kind of that that's what you got to do. You know, you got to serve people. But in all of these, the little bit of political activism in the Muslim community, the large amount of political activism in the Cuban community, people are not looking at what's going to happen if we lose this democracy. Because clearly we're on a slippery slope. And, you know, democracy has been pitted against socialism, but the things that Fatima and you are talking about, all of those are socialists. Give me something. Give me Medicare. Give me Medicaid. Give me. All of those are socialist ideas, not necessarily democratic ideas, but they're part of a democratic socialism, which is really kind of what we have. You know, and all of it comes from the Protestant Christian ideals, which founded this country. You know, the ideas of charity and philanthropy to anybody, regardless of supposedly color, creed, or, you know, and all of that good stuff. And they have worked pretty good. But what the hell's going to happen if we lose those ideals? Obama deported 3 million people.
Mm-hmm.
Trump has built a wall and would deport himself if he thought about it. because he's the son of immigrants. You know, I had a cartoon come to me this morning, which was hilarious. It said, let's turn the clock back to 1945 and give his father a condom. And I said, yes. You know, I mean, there's all of this stuff roaming around, but what are the possibilities if we lose the democracy? The children gonna stay in cages? I mean, what? We can't keep children in cages forever, although Trump would like to.
Right, he would like to. That's the only plan he has for. You have plans for nothing else, but just to keep taking those kids away. And
But I mean, what happens to the mentality of children who've been taken away from their parents, and especially the infants and toddlers? Well, not the infants, but the toddlers who were just getting to bonding, taken away and put in a cage. What kind of human being do you become?
those children, if they return to their parents, some of them don't even recognize their parents anymore because they've been in those cages for 2 or 3 years, and they're being terrorized by the people who take care of them, quote unquote. And now when the parents show up, said, "Who are you?" They don't know. And there's been cases like that as well. And they've been damaged for life. I mean,
I know. So we have hundreds of human beings who are damaged for life because of the actions of the stroke of a pen. We have a Muslim ban and that ban worked two ways. People couldn't go home to see about precarious situations, lands being lost or taken to court. In Pakistan, I know this is a particular thing where landlords rent out lands for a particular amount of time, and then the son comes along and say, "Oh, no, I want to skip that lease." And the literate, educated person may sit here, but because of the ban, can't go home. Parents get ill pre-COVID, couldn't go home. You know, I mean, what is all of this going to lead us to?
I wish I knew.
Come on now.
He said, "Well, you know, if Trump stays in the White House for the next 4 years, it's going to get much worse. If he doesn't stay and he's voted out, or hopefully tonight, we
won't know for a few days. But
but if he loses the election, period, and leaves the White House finally, the first 3 or 4 years of the Biden administration is going to have to start undoing all those problems. This is a very serious
hour one.
Yeah.
Fatima, let me give you the last 2 sentences.
Okay, so I really think that it doesn't matter who's in the power, the gaps actually remain, and it's the gaps for systems literacy, it's the gaps for awareness, and it's the gaps of having the infrastructure that we need in order to connect. For example, those cages, those kids in the cages, there was an organization in Florida, a Muslim organization that actually was accepting 1,200 kids from this. They were ready to accept, but it couldn't materialize because we don't have the infrastructure in place.
There you go.
We definitely need the infrastructures in place, and it's the job of each one of us. We are responsible. At this point, after 32, 33 years as a migrant in this country, I feel myself as responsible for those kids that are in the cages. And Dr. Nazim, mashallah, you're doing a wonderful, and thank you. My heart goes out that this kind of